Well, you sit at that desk as a prosecutor on a case like this, and trust me, your heart is pounding as that judge is reading that verdict, and they were elated and doing everything, I'm sure, possible not to just burst out, jump up, and say, amen. But, you know, I wasn't inside that courtroom, but we do have a couple of guests that were involved intimately in this case. And again, this is the Timothy Coggins case, and I'd like to introduce you to Heather Coggins, who is the niece of Timothy Coggins, as well as Tyrone and Jacqueline Coggins, who are the siblings of Timothy Coggins. Welcome, guys, to the show. Thank you so much for being on.
Hi, and thank you.
Okay, so listen, congratulations on the verdict. And you don't know me, but I'm a former homicide prosecutor myself. And, you know, it's always an elating thing to win a case like this. But I'm curious, what was your emotion then? Is it any different now that you've had an opportunity to decompress a little bit?
It's somewhat still the same. It's almost surreal. We know that we know that there has been a verdict that has been rendered, but we're still in disbelief that we're finally here, that we have finally received a verdict after almost 35 years. It's almost surreal. We're definitely, as I mentioned yesterday, elated with the news that there has finally been a verdict in Tim's case.
Right, and going back to the fact that it was a cold case, I listened to the prosecutor's opening statements, and I thought she was extremely effective in the very beginning of the case in saying, you know what, guys, to the jury, things weren't necessarily investigated as well as we would have liked. I felt the prosecutor was trying to get ahead of the fact that it could have been a better investigation. Did you know that was what the prosecutor was doing when they were doing the opening?
Well, it's definitely not a secret that the investigation could have been better. In our opinion and many opinions of others, this case could have been solved 34 years ago if someone cared.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that. What was the difference from you or the family that's been living with this for so long in the way that you saw police and prosecutors going about it back in the time that this happened versus now? Do you see a difference in the way law enforcement is handling these kinds of cases?
Well, as I mentioned yesterday, during the time that my Uncle Tim was murdered, I was only 6 years old, and of course his siblings were much younger then. But according to the records and information that we know regarding the case, the investigation, modern day investigation 2017, has changed drastically than in 1983. As I mentioned yesterday, the DA's office, the Spalding County Sheriff's Department, as well as the Georgia Bureau of Investigation has changed dramatically.
Right, and when you were going through this, knowing that it was an old case and there were some hurdles that the prosecutor had to go forward, were you just simply happy that they had you guys had your day in court, irrespective of what happened with the verdict? Of course, you wanted guilty, but were you happy that at least somebody was being held accountable by way of a trial?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Irrespective of whether it was guilty or innocent, we were just happy to be there 34 years later. No one was ever even arrested for Tim's murder. Tim's investigation halted 2 weeks after he was murdered. So no one investigated, to our knowledge, any further than that. It would come up throughout the years, but there was never an arrest. There was never really a thorough investigation. So irrespective of the verdict, we were just extremely elated to even have our day in court, and arrest, and more so our day in court.
You know, can you tell the viewers, and again, based on my experience, what it's like to have a loved family member murdered in this fashion, which obviously we'll get to some pieces of why I think it's a really bad murder. But what is it like not to have that closure for all those years? And how did your family survive that? What did you do? What resiliency did you have to just get through the mere fact that he was taken away and no one was being held accountable?
Well, the mere fact of the way that he was taken away tore our family apart, tore my grandparents apart. The mere fact that it was so brutal and we didn't know was very, very hard for our family. As I mentioned, it tore our family apart. But we are a family of faith, and we had to learn to forgive a long time ago in order to move on. We couldn't continue to hang on to the what ifs or what may have happened or who may have done it, because it would have killed all of us internally. So we are people of faith, and we just had to believe in God and ask for healness, and ask that we get through it.
Okay, and well, God has delivered, maybe not in the human time frame, but he certainly has with this particular verdict. So Tyrone and Jacqueline, I mean, this was your brother. What was the family dynamic that was going on at the time, and the frustrations that you've had for all these many years? And of course, how do you feel about what happened yesterday?
Well, as a family today, we're very happy. And during this time this thing happened, it was terrible. And the family was we didn't know really what was going on, and we didn't know who the enemy was. So right now we're very elated, very happy that God has kept his promise and that no sin goes unpunished. So we're very grateful, very thankful.
So let's address the race piece here. You know, we're up in the northeast part of the world here, New York and New Jersey area. I prosecuted cases for many years. I've never really prosecuted one that was so obviously racially motivated. And was this something that you had a sense was the motive of this case, or was it not till later on, until police and prosecutors started picking the case back up again, that you started to see that this was definitely a racially motivated murder?
Well, Tim was always a lover of people. Tim loved all people, white people, black people. It didn't matter what race a person was. But however, Tim was known to hang out with mostly Caucasian people, and a lot of people did not like that. In our town in 1983. We are from a small rural town in the South, and although you have a lot of people who don't have the same ideologies as others when it comes to racism, but you have a lot of people that still carry that racist opinion and racist attitude.
And we had other lawyers that were on talking about that were from your neck of the woods. Do you think that racial attitude has gotten better over the years, or is it the same, or is it worse?
I definitely think we have a way to go, but I definitely think that it has gotten better over the years. I think the racial undertone was the reason Tim's investigation was not investigated to the fullest extent, the way that it should have been. So the racial undertone the racial climate has improved. However, I still think that we have a way to go.
Right. Do you think that because it has actually changed the racial dynamic, that it gave the district attorney, they're elected over there down your way, is that correct?
Correct.
Right. Do you think it gave them the feeling that it was let's go after this? And I know that this is an area where apparently there still is some old school racial stuff that may exist more than it would in say Atlanta proper, where it's a little bit more mixed environment. Do you think the prosecutor was doing the right thing here and feeling comfortable, or was it based on getting votes?
I definitely don't think it had anything to do with votes. I definitely think that it was the right thing to do. You have to understand, the Sheriff Dix came into office January 2017. We were notified July 2017 that Tim's case had been reopened. There was an arrest made October 2017, and we have a verdict in June 2018. So all this happened fairly quickly in a matter of months. That didn't happen in 34 years. So I definitely think that there was a new sheriff in town, there was a new DA in town, and there's a new GBI, Georgia Bureau of Investigation in town as well, that wanted to see justice, not for any elections, not for any votes, not to do anything other than get justice for a case that was closed 2 weeks after it happened. So I don't think that there was any kind of ulterior motive that the DA or the sheriffs or the GBI, I think they just kind of wanted to do the right thing.
Okay, yeah, that's fascinating. And, you know, the district attorney really went on the line with this as far as I'm concerned, because obviously trying a case that old makes it that much more difficult for the prosecution to win the case. Did you have an opportunity to actually meet with the district attorney himself?
Yes.
And when you found out that they were prosecuting this case, did this come as like an outright surprise to you, or did you hear rumblings that was going on?
We didn't know until July 2017 that the case had been reopened. At that point, we were called by the sheriff's office and we met. And of course, sometime after that, we were able to meet with the DA as well as the assistant DA, Marie Broder. And they kept us abreast throughout the investigation and throughout everything leading up to the trial. So we have been really connected to the Sheriff's Department, the GBI, as well as the District Attorney's Office during this process.
Well, I was very impressed as a person who led a prosecutorial agency with the fact that they took this case on, that obviously they reopened it, that they did the right thing. I thought the prosecutor did a tremendous job in positioning the case for a guilty verdict. And after all those years, we have that young man, a picture of him right now, who did absolutely nothing wrong and was not only murdered but brutalized, a racist homicide. And it's got to be a sweet victory for law enforcement to know that they have brought the ball over the goal line, if it were, for a guilty verdict, and certainly for a family that's waited so long and relied upon the graces of God to deliver this. I want to thank you all for appearing before the Law and Crime Network. We did a gavel-to-gavel coverage, as we like to say, and hopefully you become fans. We got an app so you can listen to all these other trials down the road, because we just love having folks like you, and I feel like a prosecutor again to see a great family finally receive justice. So God bless you and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you too.
Okay. Well, listen, guys, we're going to go to a break real quick. There's lots going on here at the Law and Crime Network, a Dan Abrams production, gavel-to-gavel coverage. On the other end of the break, we're going to come back with some more fascinating law.